Hello, welcome back to ScottyFullStack.com. I'm Scotty, and today I wanted to talk about scripting. So one common thing that continually comes up in job descriptions that I cover and is a common request in my Slack channel is scripting tutorials. Now, full disclaimer, this tutorial is not going to be teaching you how to the basics of scripting or any patterns or anything like that. It's going to be primarily focused on what we would want to talk about in an interview, and that being you want to be a problem solver, and in this case, one that automates things. With manual work comes a lot of human error, and one that needs to be avoided. And also now, when we think about automation, we can put things on a cron job and have it run monthly, weekly, daily, minute by minute. Things like that. So that's what I kind of want to cover here and get you rolling in that direction. What I want to talk about today is I'm going to be just kind of pulling data from NamUs.gov. It's a missing persons database. And I've actually done this specific automation / scripting experience for myself. I had built an app that was a 404 page. And so when you hit the wrong page on a website, it would pull up local people to your IP address. So wherever your IP is coming from, it would pull up local people from that area of that state, and specifically county at the time. So I may consider publishing that again, may teach you how to build that app at some point. I don't know. Right now it's doing nothing because I took it down. It was a money pit, but I'll show you here how I handled the data. And how I automated that data pull and inserting into my own database. So obviously I'm not teaching you any routes here, any sites, but we are going to talk about the data. And this is going to be a bash shell tutorial. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm on NamUs. I had to create a user account to download the CSV. And what I want to do is just go ahead and do it by my state. Obviously, we don't want to do everything here because it would take up a lot of rows. So we're going to go ahead and just do my state, Florida. So I'm going to search. And sorry, this is U.S. specific. I know a lot of my audience is outside of the U.S. So I know if you're in Europe, there's a great European one as well. I don't know what it's called, but I've seen people using it. So go ahead and check that out. I'm going to go ahead and export. Okay, so I've got my download here, my CSV, and that's what we're going to be using for the data. So I'm going to head on up here to a notepad, and you should open up that too. And I do have my notes in front of me, so you're aware. I'm not doing all of this off of just pure memory, and there's a reason for that. There's a lot of syntax here and things that could go wrong. And so I just want to make sure I get this right for you on the fly. But all of this was written by me and borrowed from Stack Overflow, so you should do the same thing, right? This is not about just being the smartest person in the room. It's about being a problem solver, right? And that's what we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and start. I'm in a project directory. It's empty, and I want to go ahead and just get our Docker file kicked off for our Postgres. So let's go ahead and open up Docker Compose. And we've done this kind of stuff before, and I'm actually going to copy and paste this file so that we save time. And obviously all we're doing here is just declaring the version, services, database service, and I don't need to build here. What I want to do is actually just do an image, and this I'm just going to do Postgres 12. My env file is going to be an app.env that we're about to create next, and our ports that we're binding are 5432. The reason for the env file is when we stand up Postgres, we need to tell it a default database, user, and password, and we're also going to supply our host in there. So that'll be next. So let's go ahead and open that up, app.env. And here, I'm going to copy and paste again, but what I want you to note here is just kind of the naming, because when we're going to be updating our HBA file, which is a file for authentication for automation, and so it's going to reference specifically the password and user. So what I'm going to do is just set my environment variables to be this in this specific way, and so this is Postgres_password. My password here is Postgres. Don't do that if you're in a production environment, and PG user is Postgres. PG database is Postgres, and PG host is 0000 because we're local, and I just want to access it from my local. So that's all there, and that's great. And so the next thing that we want to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy my data file over into this directory and rename it like data CSV, something simple. So I can do that by doing download, there it is, and I'm going to do data.csv. So we're going to name it data.csv. Okay, and we have it. So let's just go ahead and take a look at it. So keep in mind, right, we're using Postgres. I want to load this data into my Postgres instance and reference it how I want with my app and have kind of control of that. So when we think about that, if I have an app that's running and this data is not static, right? People go missing all the time, unfortunately, and sometimes people are found. Sometimes, obviously I just mentioned it, people are added to this list. So if we think about it in that context, when we load our data into our Postgres instance, we have to really take into account, first and foremost, our header, right? All of our column names, are they what we want them to be? In my case, I don't want spaces, and I don't want capital letters, and maybe I don't want this slash here. So I'm going to be automating the removal of that. And even though that may not be entirely necessary for this specific project, because there's not too many columns, let's just imagine if your database had a lot more columns, right? You're not going to want to just manually update that. That would be a waste of your time and your employer's time. Think about this from the context of an interview and you pitching yourself. You can save time and money and do it right in just one little command line run of a file that translates all of this to what you want it to be. That's how you need to think when you're approaching an interview and you're scripting. Now, I'm not saying don't go out and learn proper scripting, proper syntax, proper algorithms and logic. Need that. I'm not going to be able to teach you that here. This is my style, and it's hard to do that in my style. But there are so many different great Udemy courses that you can learn all of this stuff on, as well as YouTube videos as well. So with that said, we're going to be transforming our header columns, and what we're going to be doing is then loading this data into our database, and we're going to update our records. We're going to remove anything that is no longer relevant. So if that file changes over time, that data changes over time, we want it to update in our Postgres instance. So it's going to be a pretty good just scripting experience all around. So we're going to need several different files here. Not need, but I want to do it that way. I think that separating this into different files will help you learn, and it's probably also a very clean way to do this, and especially when it comes to bash scripting, which can get kind of messy at times when you write large files. So let's go ahead and just start with transforming our headers. So we have our headers.sh file. You can go ahead and do that. And here at the top of our file, we want to tell the interpreter what to run. So we're going to do what's called a shebang. And that is a £, and then an exclamation point / bin bash, because that's where my bash is. So what we're going to be using to start this off is the awk utility. And so if you have any questions about any utilities, any flags or anything, of course the internet is great, but we also have right here, we do a man awk. And here this tells us that it's a pattern scanning and text processing language. So we're going to use this at first to separate out our data.csv file header, and we are going to transform it to lowercase just to start. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to do an awk and then an nr, it's a capital NR equals. And here in this case, we're going to do 1 for the first row. And I'm going to print that value out to lower. And that's a $0. And so this is going to take the first row and it's going to print that first row to lowercase. And we're going to print that to data.csv. So we're going to change that data.csv and we're going to print that to list.csv. Okay. So let's go ahead and chmod this and run it. Oh, we need a sudo. Chmod plus x headers.sh. Okay, and I can run that. So while we can do that. Let's list it, and now we have our list.csv here. Let's open it up, and let's pull this over here to our data now where that was. And as you can see now, all of our header values and columns are now lowercase. So let's go ahead and remove the space and that slash from here and just have underscores. That would be a great way to translate this to put right into our database. So I'm going to use sed for this. Okay, you can do the same thing down here, man sed, and you can see it's a stream editor for filtering and transforming text. So I'm going to pass two flags here, the Z and the I. The Z is for null character values, and the I is for in-place editing. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and do two patterns here. So in the single quotes, start it with an S and a slash. And the first pattern that we're going to look up is a space. And then we're going to do another slash to separate that out. So this is what we're looking for right here, is this space, another slash, and next I want to replace it with an underscore, right? So we're going to put what we're replacing that with, another slash, and then a G for global. And I'm going to do a semicolon, and now here starts our next pattern. And this next pattern is going to remove the slash and what will be an underscore from our last pattern, right? Because our last pattern is going to replace each of these spaces with an underscore. So I want to remove that first underscore and slash and just leave the last underscore. So here I'm going to go ahead and do an S again and then a slash. And so I want to remove the underscore, and I have to escape my next slash. Okay, so here I'm looking for an underscore slash, and I want to replace that. So another slash, and it's getting a little confusing at this point. I want to replace that with nothing. So one more slash. I'm going to do a G for global, and that is the end of that pattern. So let's go ahead and run this just to make sure I'm not crazy. And no input. So data in place, or the in place, allows us to edit this, list.csv file in place. So let's try that. Okay, so you see it just updated live here. My spaces are now underscores, and if I come over, race underscore ethnicity, so that is a new column with no slash, and it looks like we're good to go here. So the final thing that I want to do with this script for headers.sh is I want to take this header column and header columns, and I want to put that row in here in place of this one. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to come over here, new line, and we're going to do another sed, a -I for in place. And this time, very important, we're going to put the number 1 S, and this 1 is going to designate the only touch the first row. Okay, and you're going to notice we're not going to put any G's on the end of our pattern this time. So 1S slash the regex dot star for everything on that first row, and we're going to replace it with, how would we replace it with this list? I have to first get this list.csv, and we want to put it into a variable. So I'm going to add a bash variable here, list equals, and I want to do a command, which is going to be, so we're going to do $, parentheses, cat list.csv. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, and hey, you know, if you want for your own, I do this all the time in a professional setting even, we can do an echo list here, and that'll print out our values. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let me comment that out. Let's run it. So here, you can see that's the input that the variable list holds, is that string of text. So what I want to do here now is uncomment this, and so we're replacing everything in this first row with $list for the variable. And so that's it. We don't want to put a G here because we're not doing anything globally in CSV. So this time data instead of list, and you're going to see we're going to update this real time. So /headers.sh, There you go. So our data is now sanitized in that regard. Everything else can stay. All of the values here are fine. We don't have to alter that data in any way. We're just going to load that straight into the database, and these are our columns headers that we can use. So let's go ahead and save that file, make sure it's saved, and we can move on to the next piece. And you know what we can do? I'm not going to automate this because it'll be quick. I'm just going to go ahead and cat out that list.csv to a just like a list.txt file real quick, and we can open that up, .text. And what I want to do here, I'm doing this for my ease of use of the next step. You'll see why in a minute. So first I can do that. I can wrap the text, and I want to go ahead and just quickly find, and this is essentially what we're doing with sed, right? It's all manual in this case, and this is why you probably want to automate as much as you can if you think about it. It's kind of annoying. So I want to first find all of the quotes, and I want to replace them with nothing. And then I want to go ahead and find the commas, and I want to replace them with a new line. If you don't have the regex selected, you need to, regular expressions. Go ahead and do that, and here we go. So this will help us in our Postgres script that's coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so that is all I need there. What we want to do next is move on over to our Postgres scripts. So let's go ahead and start by opening up a file called setup_db.sh. And here we're going to need our shebang again. So bin bash. Okay, so now for the setup DB, like I told you, we had our headers that we wanted to load in, and all of our data is ready to go. So now we need to create a command that can do that. So it's just essentially what we'd be doing on the command line. If you don't have PSQL, the PostgreSQL, installed the client on your laptop, you should probably do that. I think it's just like PSQL or PostgreSQL-common or client. You can probably Google that real quick. Just type in PSQL. It'll probably give you a suggestion on what to load. But you're going to need that for your scripts to run locally. You could always do that on a box somewhere if you want. Just thought this was the easiest setup. So PSQL-H, if we wanted to connect, we could. Let's go ahead and set it. Let's go ahead and fire it up first. So we have our Docker Compose YAML. So let's go ahead and do that. Docker Compose up. And I forgot to set it to background, but you can do that with a Control Z. All right, and now it's in the background, Docker PS, so it's there. And we can go ahead and try to connect to that. So PSQL-H 0000-U Postgres-d Postgres for the database and user. And it's going to prompt me for my password, right? So we did that as Postgres. And here I have nothing in there, so we're good. So what we would do is essentially run exactly what we'd run on the command line. So you could do that same -h, same thing here, but adding a -c is the command, and then your command in quotes. This -c is pretty common when it comes to containers, which is what we're going to be running inside of it. So let's do that. PSQL-H, and instead of doing out our manual host here, we can go ahead and do $PG host, because that's what's in our environment file, a -big U for PG user, and then a -d for PG database. Okay, so we have, whoops, I have to do my $signs. Okay, and a -c, and here we're going to go ahead and put the remainder in quotes. So the first Postgres command that we want to run is a create table, if not exists, and this table is going to be called persons. Okay, and then a parentheses, and inside of this parentheses we're going to define out our columns and what type they are. So for this, I want to first add, not in our data file, but an ID column, and this is going to be serial. So it's a serial value, and then we can put a comma, and we're going to do each of the items in our list. Okay, so that's why I did this in the last step in list.text. I'm going to add them here. Got to tab those up. And so case number, I'm going to do a varchar, and here we're going to do 50, comma, and we can make this unique. That's why I have my notes. I wouldn't have done this and I would have run into an error later on. The DLC is a date, so we're going to keep that as a date. The last name is a varchar. I'm just going to do 50 as well. First name is going to be varchar 50. Missing age. Now you might think this is overkill. I'm going to do 50, but it's like a weird format in their file, so not even going to worry about the characters there. It's not just 3 for like 100, right? City is going to be varchar of like 50 as well. And then here, county, same thing. Whoops. Varchar 50. State, we can do the same thing. Varchar 50. Sex is going to be varchar of 50. And then race, ethnicity, I want to do a, for this one, I did run into issues on this initially on this, varchar of 100, because they end up putting multiple races and ethnicities all in one string, and it ends up, you know, being a pretty large one. And then, of course, date modified is just date, so we are good there. All right, and that is everything that we need for this specific file. So I'm going to go ahead and semicolon that, and then close the quote. And we are good with this one. So actually, if you wanted to, well, you know what, first, before we run this to test it out on the columns, we can go ahead. We have to take a side shortcut here, if you will, to authentication of our local machine to the Postgres instance from an automated perspective. We don't have to pass in a password every single time. We can tell Postgres on the instance itself to allow this host to speak to it. So for that, we don't need to automate this. As a matter of fact, you may more likely in a professional setting update this manually, but I'm going to do this just for the extra practice of scripting, right? So let's go ahead and open up something like we would call like perms.sh. And here we're going to do the shebang again, bin bash. And here what we're going to do is just do a simple for script for container in, and then a command, which is docker ps. And we can grep here, like grep. In our case, the project's named ETL. So you could do ETL or maybe even Postgres here, or DB, something like that. And then I want to awk again. We've seen that before, right? And here I want to do print 1, because I just want the first one there. And the reason I'm grabbing this ETL is I don't want to pull the specific word container in. And I'm going to semicolon it. And here, and you can always play with this stuff as you want. So for the container in docker ps, awking the first column, we want to go ahead and do echo, and here we could print our container if you want, and so you can see the container name. And then we want to also, we can semicolon that, and we can do a docker exec-it container, which is what we just pulled right from our for loop. And we want to do a bash-c, and here I want to replace something in a file there. So print f, and this is very specific syntax and positioning here, but print f, and here I'm going to do a single quote. Print f host all Postgres 0000/0 trust. All right, so we're going to be telling it to trust the localhost, and then we're going to t that to /var var lib PostgreSQL data, and then pghba.conf. Close it off with a final. I did this all weird because I was on the wrong track. Quote, and there we go, and we are done with that loop, and we can do docker compose restart. Whoops. Okay, so let's go ahead and chmod this. Chmod plus x perms.sh. Let's go ahead and run that now. So you can see it printed off our container, and then it restarted the Docker instance, right? So if I were to now try to connect to my Postgres instance from my localhost, I don't need to input a password. So that's what we're going to do for our automation here. Our automation no longer needs to be prompted for a password and no longer needs an input. So what I'm going to do is try to run this setup.sh, and let's just see what comes out. So whoops, just took a screenshot. Chmod plus x setup.db, and here if I run that, dash u, so I was going to do this in another step, but we can go ahead and do it now just for the sake of testing. So here I want to go ahead and just export our environment variables. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to also do this in another step as well. I just think that actually we may or may not need to. Let's just go ahead and set it up here in setup.db and just see how it goes. But I'm going to go ahead and export a command, which is going to be cat app.env. And so that'll export our environment variables prior to running this Postgres command. And we'll go ahead and run it again. And we got a syntax error, and it might be the comma there. There we go. Okay, so just remove that comma at the last line there, and now we were able to, as you can see, we got an output called create table. Let's go ahead and connect and just do a /d, and here we go. We have our person's table, no data in it, of course. So we are set up and ready to load. So let's move on to the next step here. Not exactly the final, but pretty much the biggest and final step, and that is updating our data. So let's go ahead and do an update.sh file. So open that up, and here bear with me, a lot of typing here, but I think it's still valuable. We're going to do the same thing as shebang /bin bash, and essentially what we want to do is first off, we're going to say, hey, drop this table if it doesn't exist, and then we want to create a new temporary table to hold our new data in as we download it and try to load it into this database. I want a new table separate from my person's one to go ahead and stage this data for a migration over. So let's go ahead and do that. So bin bash psql-h, and we're going to do the same thing, pg host -u pg user -d pg database. Okay, so there's all of that, and we can then do a -c, and essentially the same thing here as the last time, except this time I'm going to add the drop table if, sorry, I said database, I meant table, if exists temp persons, so the temporary persons table, and here then we're going to create table temp persons. Okay, and go ahead and do a parentheses. Okay, so same thing as last time, so let's go ahead and copy over from our setup DB. I'm just going to go ahead and copy these values. So go back to update. There we go. And so that is good. We have pretty much all of the same values, which is what we want, and that is all we need. So I'm going to go ahead and close that off with a semicolon. Back that up just to keep it clean. We can move on to the next command in this, which is going to start out with pretty much the exact same thing here. So let's do that. So I'm just going to make this a separate command for just ease of understanding. Going to do our quotes again, and here what we want to do, I'll do this on the same line because with that new line there, it might give us a syntax error. I'm going to go ahead and start with a copy command. So we want to copy our data from our CSV file that we cleansed in the first step, and we're going to do that with the copy command, temp persons. So copy to temp persons here. Let's go ahead and head back to our list.txt. Again, this is just for ease of transformation here. I'm just going to replace my new lines with commas, and that should be good. So there we go. And I want to take this line and I want to paste it in my update here. So what we're going to be copying from the data.csv are all of those column names into temp persons columns, right? I'm going to wrap this text to make it a little easier. And then from here, we're going to do a from, and then in single quotes, ./data.csv. And we're going to designate a delimiter of quote, comma, quote. And then we're going to designate this as a CSV and then a header. All right. So that is the first Postgres command. Anything you don't understand here, Google it. I think it'll help you. But this is, we're copying the data from the CSV into our Postgres table. All right, so now the next step here is that we want to go ahead and insert the data from our temporary table into our real, live prod persons table. So I'm going to go ahead and do this with, in the same quotes, the same command section here, I'm going to do an insert command. So insert into persons, and we're going to do the same thing here, but this time with ID. So because the ID is the serial, if you remember, so comma, and then paste that line. So we have all those columns here that we're going to be designating the insert into, and then how do we select that data to insert? Select all from temp persons, and here we can do on conflict. We're going to conflict of a case number, which, if you remember, is a unique value. So case number. Let's make sure I don't. Yep, case number do. So on conflict, case number do update. Okay, so this is some key logic here to differentiate between just inserting on top of, and let's just say if we take our data and we try to insert it into, so our new data, and we try to insert it into our persons table, and we come up with a conflict on a case number, which is very likely going to happen, obviously, because not all of these case numbers are changing every single time. We're going to do an update on those fields, and so we're going to then set, and this is going to be the same line here, set these values. Okay. And then we're going to equals, in parentheses, select all from temp persons, where temp persons dot case number equals persons dot case number. Okay, and that is good there. And then the last step I want to do is drop table temp persons. Okay, and that is it for our update. So we made it through that. It was a little bit confusing there for even me, and I wrote this dang thing. So keep in mind, when I did this the first time around, I hit lots of snags, lots of errors. When I was actually doing my project and building the application, I had to really dig in and understand why I was getting a conflict on case number. Obviously, we get that, right? It's a unique value, and we insert over top of the other one. We want to be careful. And then, on top of that, all the different commands and in what order, the setting, all the stuff. You even saw I was referencing my notes. So don't get discouraged if this stuff just doesn't come naturally. This is challenging stuff, especially whenever you're geared towards something like cloud or something like you've been doing just a sysadmin role your entire career. You've been dealing with only MySQL, right? These are things that take time to learn, and you need to be a problem solver. And again, if I can't get this across to you enough, you need to go into your interview confident and let them know that you can solve problems. And this is what we're doing. So with that said, we can go ahead and save this file, and we can chmod it, update.sh, and I'm going to go ahead and just run it, and we're going to go run everything else systematically here in just a minute. But I guess I have to export for this as well, so let's do that. Export. See, I had originally had this set up where we have a master file, and we will still do that, but for now, just for running this, I want you to see it, so I'm going to call an audible and do do a app.env export here, and we can run it. So let's do that again. Update. Okay, so it does not exist, it's skipping, it's creating a table, and then we drop the table, so obviously all that stuff in between is happening. So if we were to log back into Postgres, I can see here my relations are still there, right? And I can do a select all from persons, and there we go. So my data's in there, right? So with that said, let's go ahead and do one final step, and you could actually call it quits here if you wanted to, but it's not enough for me. I want to make sure that if we have this run from a cron job, it does everything for us all at once, right? So let's go ahead and do that quickly, because I know this is a long video already, and I don't like that. No, you don't either. So let's go ahead and code something that we'd call an etl.sh. Okay, and in the meantime, what I'm going to do is I am going to pull everything down. So docker compose kill db. Let's just make sure it's removed. Okay, yep, I want to remove it. And then docker ps, right? Okay, so let's do a docker compose up again. And I didn't set it to the background again, so Control Z. And then PSQL, I should get prompted for my password because our HBA has been re-updated, so Postgres is my password, and there's nothing there. Okay, good. That's what we want. So now in our ETL file, what I'm going to do is do another shebang, the final one, bin bash, and then I want to go ahead and we can do our final export here. This is kind of the overarching export that'll be of all exports. So I want to export our app.env, right? And here I want to do a setup underscore db. We're going to run that. We are going to run our .sh for both of these. Okay. We can also, before all this, we might want to run our perms, right? perms.sh. We can also run our headers.sh to update our data. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's remove our list.csv. Let's remove our, I'll leave the list.txt for GitHub later. Doesn't really play any part in this. We use that manually. We'll keep data, obviously. Yeah, everything else. So here in this, I mean, you can always, the best thing you can do is put notes, update the headers. I'm not gonna do this for all of them because of time's sake, but put notes in between each one of these so that they, run and people who come after you will know what they're looking at, right? Okay, so that's pretty much all we need here. I'm going to go ahead and chmod etl. Okay, and that's ready. And let's go ahead and kick it off. It might get an error, hopefully not. All right, let's do it. Okay, so we set the permissions on the Postgres, right? But we did overwrite a file, so keep that in mind for a professional setting. We overwrote the HBA file in our Postgres instance, but did it for our sake, right? We manipulated the headers in the data.csv. We created the table with the proper column names. We updated the data, and all of this. So let's go ahead. Let's check it out. This is good. It's our data. We get to go have fun now. I'm in caps lock still. Postgres. No, we don't have Postgres. PSQL-H. And here, there's my relations. Select all from persons. Sweet. So this is the part where you like and subscribe. If you made it this far, I doubt you did. I'm probably the only one here. But yeah, that's a good feeling. So again, this was a real project I did. I hope you enjoyed it. May not be exactly one-to-one practical for you, but it was a problem that I had that I needed to run on a cron job, and I did it. So when you go into your professional setting and you go into that interview, you absolutely should emphasize the fact that you are a problem solver and that you can automate things and you will transform their company. So with that said, if you made it here, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And feel free to reach out to me on the Slack channel, get to my website. New website's coming too, so it's going to be updated and much nicer. So yeah, look forward to chatting with you and talking it over. Thanks for watching.